Along the verdant shores of the Patuxent River in southern Maryland, millennia of human history and culture lie buried just inches below the soil's surface. And on a sunny June morning, a crew of amateur archaeologists are hard at work, searching for a piece of that past, a point on a centuries-old map labeled Wighkawamecq.
The Augustine Herman map is supposed to depict Maryland in the year 1670. It shows a Native American village in this particular location.
A village that colonial records suggest was the last known home of the Patuxent and Mattaponi people. This summer, archaeologists Matt McKnight and Stephanie Sperling are overseeing the search for Wighkawamecq as part of the 50th field session in Maryland archaeology. This annual event invites members of the public to participate in some of the most exciting excavations around the state.
Kids, adults, senior citizens, anybody can come out here and volunteer for some time. And we train them in proper field techniques, teach them how to excavate, how to record artifacts, how to wash and clean artifacts in our field lab. It's a great experience for everybody.
This year, they've set up shop at Billingsley House, just upstream from where the Patuxent flows into an expansive tidal marsh called Jug Bay.
We know that Native people settled there thousands and thousands of years ago. There's more than 60 sites that archaeologists have discovered in this area, and probably far more that we haven't discovered yet. And artifacts have been found going back at least 10,000 years. But specifically, what the ASM field session is looking for this year are traces of the contact period village.
And I think we're pretty close.
A metal detector survey pointed Matt to this section of the field, where volunteers then dug a number of test units, removing soil inch by inch and screening it for artifacts. So far, the clues that they might be in the right place are small things. A tiny scrap of brass, a few bits of pipe, fragments of the 17th century mixed in amongst much older objects.
So this is an ancient projectile point. It's a little too big to be an arrowhead. So my guess is that it's probably the point of a throwing spear.
But each artifact pulled from the soil, whether or not it brings them closer to Wighkawamecq, offers a direct, tangible link to another human being.
Sometimes you're the first one to touch that since it was dropped or lost. And that's a very neat connection to it.
It's a connection that longtime field session volunteer Roy Brown feels particularly keenly as a primitive technologist.
I started back in 1987 when I found a bone tool up in Garrett County. And I thought it was so cool. I said, I could make that. And it escalated from that.
Flint knapping, tanning hides, pottery, not to mention an authentic eastern woodland wigwam, which he built at Rocky Gap State Park in Allegheny County after helping to excavate the remains of a similar structure at a nearby archaeological site.
The wigwam site was created as an educational tool. Native Americans are pretty misunderstood. I feel a sense of responsibility for enlightening the kids about what the people were really like.
And it's not just about educating park visitors. For Roy, it's also about what he himself can learn through doing.
Primitive technology or experimental archaeology is the process of recreating and replicating items as accurately as we think the people did, so that we get a better understanding of the people. I mean, it's nice having the objects when I'm done, but the real insight you get is from doing it. It's a nice flight.
The same holds true back at Billingsley.
I think a lot of times the public thinks that it's actually about recovering really cool artifacts for a museum. It's more about documenting the site and reconstructing human behavior from where the artifacts are in the ground relative to one another.
To capture that information, volunteers take copious notes.
Okay, so it goes sharply down to start with.
Making maps of the test units and keeping track of things like soil color and texture. For Rico Newman, a member of Maryland's native Piscataway tribe, it was precisely this care and attention to detail that helped change his once negative attitude toward archaeology.
Beyond my great-grandparents, I don't know where anybody else is buried. So they could be buried here, I don't know. You know, so I always had it that somebody's gonna put a shovel in the ground and decapitate one of my ancestors. And I had to get past that. So for several years, I would go to sites where they were working, such as this one, and I'd watch and see what they were doing.
Before long, he'd caught the bug.
I learned a lot by doing exactly what you see me doing, by getting down on the ground, on my knees, on my hands, shaking screens, looking at these small things coming out of the earth, and they tell a story.
For now, it's hard to say what exactly that story will be. But one of the more promising finds is something called a cultural feature. On dig sites, features are things like walls, hearths, or in this case, what looks to be an oyster roasting pit.
Just note it and don't scrape into it much more.
Unlike artifacts, which are portable, features are fixed in the soil, making them especially useful for pinning down the location of past human activity.
So what we've done is bisected it. As we go down, we'll be able to see sort of the side view of this feature and how deep it is. So we hope that there's good information recovered from this pit that can tell us something about diet. Hopefully it's datable from the carbon or the oyster shells. We've put a lot of hope into this, this little pit.
And though they don't know it yet, that hope will pay off. With successful carbon dating to sometime between the years 1458 and 1631, just prior to the first English settlers' arrival in Maryland. One more clue that they could be close to Wighkawamecq. But there's still a lot of work to be done.
All the notes, all the artifacts, once the artifacts have been analyzed, there'll be a final report written, and then everything is going to go to the Maryland Archaeological Conservation Laboratory, and they'll be available to researchers basically in perpetuity.
There are so many research questions that could be asked at Billingsley beyond just the contact period.
And no matter what those questions and answers may be, digs like this one inevitably add texture and color to the tapestry that is Maryland history.
What comes of this, the importance of it is it fills in the blanks. When you look at Maryland's books that are used in the schools to teach, Native history, culture, and traditions are left out. And it's work like this that helps promote us and put us back into the big picture.